Hi, everyone. Welcome to the MSDW Biz Apps Marketing Minutes podcast. I'm your host, Adam Berezin from MSDW, and I'm thrilled to have you all with us today. This is the place where we dive deep into the critical marketing strategies that drive success for Microsoft ISVs and partners. Whether you're looking to strengthen your brand, generate leads, or stay ahead of industry trends, we're here to provide actionable insights and expert perspectives to help you achieve your goals. Today, I'd like to welcome a very special guest who I've known for about a decade, Mary Miller. Mary is a Microsoft Channel veteran and marketing director for PayTrace. Mary, welcome to the Biz Apps Marketing Minutes podcast.
Thanks, Adam. It's great to be here.
So to get started, for people that aren't too familiar with PayTrace, can you give us a brief overview about what you do and the problems that PayTrace solves in the industry?
Yeah, so PayTrace is the B2B payments processing company. Now, we started about 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago, actually, as a payment gateway. And much like the Microsoft Dynamics channel, we started as we worked through partners. So we went to market nearly 100% through a partner community. So making the shift to Microsoft was sort of a natural evolution. But as we evolved the product beyond gateway to processing and software solutions and really enhanced features around, credit card processing and merchant accounts and merchant services and accounts receivable automation, the products have continued to evolve. All of them, however, have been focused on automation and making the lives of accounting and financial professionals easier, adding efficiencies into their day, reducing manual workflows, reducing risks for errors, reducing the fraud risk, all of the things associated with B2B payments in particular that, tend to be potentially higher value, higher volume, larger transactions, those kinds of things. So PayTrace is really focused on accelerating the cash flow for organizations and often through digital payments such as credit cards and ACH, the things that businesses really need to focus on as they're making payments. And as we evolve even further, we were acquired, joined the family of North American Bankcard a couple of years ago. Now, as we became part of the North family, we were just continued to gain investment and focus in areas where we can expand even more into the technology of the Microsoft space. So we've become very ERP system focused as a result of that. And the growth is, literally sky's the limit. Adam, how fast the Microsoft community is growing and how much presence those ERP systems are gaining. And so as we integrate now with many of those ERP systems, it really opens up a lot of new market opportunities and really helps customers in those areas, specifically in the Microsoft space, address those same challenges that we've been helping them tackle for years, and now with a lot more integration as well.
Yep. No, that's awesome. And and I followed somewhat of the evolution of PayTrace, and it's really cool to see everything that you have done and that you currently are doing. And I'm excited to see what you come up with as well for the Biz Apps community. And you I think hold an interesting place in this space because you've not only been in the channel for a long time, but you have experience marketing to partners, marketing to users, marketing and trying to work with people at Microsoft as well. I would love to know how you got started as a marketer in general, and in sort of the evolution of how you came to the Microsoft channel. I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah. So it's interesting. When I actually started college years and years ago, I started with the intent, and probably not many people in our community know this, maybe some, few close friends, but I started in the social work industry. So my goal was to help people, overcome their problems and challenges and issues and all that sort of thing. And I got to a point in that educational career that I realized it was too personal for me. I had to kind of take a step back and find a different career path. And so about halfway through my college experience, I switched to marketing and business, with focus on finance and management leadership and all of those sorts of things, but very targeting marketing. And I quickly learned that it was the perfect marriage, because marketing I see now as the social work of business, because we help people solve problems. We help organizations address challenges. And in many cases, we're the educator, we're the facilitator, we're kind of the spider in the middle of the web trying to bring everything together, whether that's messaging or product launch timelines or communication plans with organizations like MSDW and the like. So the idea of expanding into marketing was sort of a natural evolution out of that career path when I was in my education. And then interestingly enough, as I was graduating from college, my first introduction to the Microsoft community was as a user. So I was a Dynamics GP user years and years ago, and most of my career, while many of the companies I've worked for have been in B2B technology, not all of them specifically within Microsoft, they've all had a similar financial services theme and financial technology theme, even if I haven't been, specifically either in or marketing to accounting professionals. So the evolution of my career into financial services marketing was very intentional as I came out of college, and very focused on helping people solve problems specifically related to financial services and the applications that they used and things like that. And then about 10 years ago, as you mentioned, I started working for a company in the Microsoft channel that provided AP automation solutions. And so we helped companies tackle the same thing that I dealt with as a user many, many years ago, the paper invoices, the manual processes, the risk for human error, the multiple steps in the process of getting invoices approved and paid and tracked and entered into an ERP system. I lived that world. So it was really kind of coming full circle to be able to then work with users who I completely related to their pain, and partners who were helping them understand how they could overcome those challenges with software and services and integrated implementations and such. And then working also with ISVs who sometimes needed to integrate with us even further. And even at PayTrace, we do that very well with companies. We have an extensive API. We could do a whole nother podcast just on that, on all the different types of integrations that we support. But I think what's key about that is knowing that this is our area of expertise, and there's ISVs that can connect and tell the story and extend the value of their solution using our payments solutions. There's partners that can add it to their stack of having a full solution for payments for their clients. And then of course, the end users can take advantage of, full payments, B2B payment solutions end to end, so that they have that visibility on the AR side and really accelerate their cash flow. So my marketing journey has very much been along the lines of at every step, financial services and B2B technology has been prevalent, and it all seems to keep coming back to Microsoft. So, here I am and full circle.
Yeah. No, it's such a great story. And I didn't know this. And I love the fact that you were essentially a user before you became a marketer to users. And I think that I would imagine that has been, that experience has really contributed to, how good of a marketer you are in this space, especially to users, because as a former user, you know how users think, and you know how they like to use the current functionality of their Dynamics platform, and how they like to work with ISVs to extend that functionality. So I think that's really interesting. Now with PayTrace, because you run the marketing there, and you do a combination of marketing, not just to users, but to partners, what do you think the best way is as a marketer in this space to run campaigns to both of those audiences? And just to kind of put some context around it, I've often find when I work with ISVs, there are ISVs that want to just reach partners, or they just want to reach customers, and then those ISVs that have sort of a hybrid approach where they want to reach both customers and partners. But I think a challenge that those ISVs have are, how do they design campaigns that are applicable to each of those individual groups? And a mistake that I have seen companies make is they try to run a single campaign to both of those groups, and they don't really do a good job of really having separate messages to each of those groups. And I'd love to get your opinion on sort of the best way to go about marketing simultaneously to customers and partners.
So it's a great question. The the approach we take at PayTrace is we have the concepts, we very tightly adopt the concepts of ICP and IPP. Many marketers in the industry will recognize that as ICP, the ideal customer profile, and IPP, the ideal partner profile. So I think the first element there is you have to be selective. You know the partners are, you know the customers are. They're looking through their requirements, they're looking through their criteria, and at the same time, they're looking to their partner. Users are looking to their partner for recommendations. So what we find is that if we meet both the users where they are and the partners where they are, let's say from an educational standpoint, the content that we serve to a partner is going to be something about, here's how we can help you educate your customers, make it turnkey, make it easy, make it off the shelf, kind of, marketing in the box, so to speak, that a partner can then take and either personalize or, use bits and pieces as it makes sense based on how they market to their current customers and meet them where they are. So constantly providing that we're an extension of your team approach with partners. And then with users, I think one of the really critical elements is understanding not only who that user is in their role, but also where they are in the buying cycle and what part they play in the buying committee. This concept of buying committee that's evolved over the last several years can, depending on the size of the company and the type of purchase now, Adam, can be, 15 to 20 plus people involved making a purchase decision for software. So you've really got to understand what the end user's role is, how they work with those other decision makers, how they work with other players within their organization to make decisions. And let's face it, change is hard. Nobody wants to move an ERP system or rip out all of their software integrations and start over, or, add a bunch of new technology because something in the market is changing significantly. Those are hard decisions to make and take a lot of time. So meeting them where they are in that journey is just so critical with educational pieces up front. I guess I can't stress that enough too. Just educate. And while you're doing that as a marketer, of course, you're also positioning yourself and your company as a thought leader. But what you're also doing is really giving the user hey, we're here for you. Here's some information that's helpful at this stage in your journey. And Mr. and Mrs. Partner, it's going to be really important for you to understand this kind of content as well, so that you can be the expert to your customers that they expect you to be. So I think it's really an element of, on the one side with partners, being an extension of their team and helping support their customers. And then on the user, really relating to, listen, we know you're going to take your time. We know there's a lot of steps in this process. Let us help educate you along the way with the right content. And, content that we distribute through your platform on MSDW is a great example of that. In some cases, we'll use videos because people want, those quick hits or a quick video. In other cases, we'll use webinars or longer form content or white papers. And all of those things play a role at different points in the buying cycle and for different members of that buying committee, depending on their level and role within the organization.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. When you're talking to users through content, and actually this is a question that I have too. What are the key points that you want to emphasize? And the way that I look at it, and you might have a different opinion on it. There's a couple of approaches. There's selling against your competitors, and then there's selling against the platform that they're integrated with, which I think is kind of tricky because you don't want to make them feel bad for choosing that particular platform. But I think the nature of the beast and why ISVs exist in general is because the platform lacks certain functionality that, certain types of businesses might need, and they can't get that natively. So how do you go about really kind of walking that fine line between, not insulting their purchase decision or their upgrade decision, and at the same time, then kind of shifting over and talking about your competitors in a way that is not necessarily, overly aggressive? How do you balance that?
Yeah, it is a really tight balance, a really fine balance, Adam. I think what in my experience, I approach it this way. First, the pain points and the challenges that the organization's facing, right? They're not receiving their cash payments, their credit card payments, their ACH payments in a timely enough fashion. They've got what's called days sales outstanding. Their DSO is way too long. On average, for most B2B companies, it's 45 to 60 days. When you're sending an invoice, whether it's a digital invoice that you're sending in email, or in some cases people still send printed, stick it in an envelope, stick a stamp on it, mail it out. When you're sending a physical invoice and waiting for that payment, often a check to come in, 60+% of organizations today, organizational payments today, still are made via check. It's mind blowing when you think about it.
But it really is.
Yeah, that's the way businesses operate. So then we think about what happens when that check arrives back at the company. Somebody opens the envelope, takes it out, manually enters the data into the ERP system, and hopefully no errors are made. Everything gets tracked accordingly, entered accordingly, flows through to GL and all of that. So understanding the pain point and the process that organization is going through is step one. And that's across whatever your ISV solution is, right? I'm using payments as an example because that's what we support. But at the end of the day, you're trying to understand what the challenge is and what the process is that organization is utilizing for, the solution you're trying to encourage them to look at. And then I think it's really a matter of understanding what they're doing today in the ERP system so that you're selling not necessarily against it, but in alignment with it. So great, you enter that information into Business Central. How long does that take? Again, I'll use Business Central as an example. Happens to be out there. Let's go with it. Seems to be the logical solution to address in this context. So you enter it into your ERP system, and then what happens to the paper? And then what happens to the collections if there's still an outstanding balance? And what happens the next time? There's this repeatable pain point, right, that they're trying to address. And so when you look at, okay, if we could decrease that cycle of 45 to 60 days to get your cash to a few days to a week or even 2 weeks, what would that do for your organization, right? So you go straight to the value of how can we add value to this ERP system that you have invested time and money and implementation and training and potentially conversion, as you described, a migration and upgrade, whatever. You've invested a lot into this system, but it's not supposed to do everything, right? At the end of the day, accounting systems are to track your debits and your credits, make sure everything looks good on your financial statements and that everything is accounted for. And ERP systems do a great job. Now, there's a lot of different nuances to that, right? Line items. And if you're distributing inventory that you source elsewhere and that you've got to track those things along the way, there's a lot of different permutations. But at the end of the day, it's an accounting system and it does that very well. But it has limitations. It's not supposed to do everything. That's why ISVs exist, right? And in that positioning, it's find where those greatest pain points are that you have to have an ISV solution to plug in to really complete that process, whether it's through automation or through an additional integration or giving you additional visibility or reporting. The whole value of adding an ISV solution to an ERP is so that that company can increase their cash flow in our case, or better access to data or visibility or whatever. So I think it's really about aligning with their challenges and showing them the value that they're going to get from having an additional solution that, again, in our case, in payment and AR automation. And then I think with the competitive landscape, listen, there are a lot of great players out there across all of the different ISV categories. And I've worked, both for and with many of them over the years. And my position is always, and our position even at PayTrace is, check out all of the options. Our focus is specifically on B2B. Now, in particular, when I say that, I don't necessarily just mean, we're a business and we sell to businesses. That's very common in our industry. But beyond that, we sell to the businesses that sell to businesses. So you can think of it as B2B to B, so if we put another 2 and B at the end there. The reason for that is the payments, as I mentioned at the beginning, the payments and the requirements and the credit card processing steps for business payments are different than consumer payments. There's different regulations, there's different financial controls, there's different processing rates. And so we specialize in that B2B space. And if that's where an organization fits and finds themselves, then we might be a really good company to talk to about our solution to see if we could be a good fit. If there's others and you're more consumer processing, there's a lot of great players that provide solutions for that as well. So I think it's really understanding where your niche is, back to that ICP and IPP profile. Understanding where you fit, knowing your partners, knowing your customers, and knowing the type of challenges they face, again, specifically for us in the B2B space, the B2B2B space is really critical. And I think that helps that helps paint the landscape in such a way that, we're not, again, positioning us against our competitors as much as saying, here's the value we bring. And if we're the right fit, then let's have a conversation. And if they're the right fit, then, we hope, we wish you all the best. It's just, we're not the fit for everybody. They're not the fit for everybody. And I think just respecting that is, a game changer in the market. We're never going to go on the offensive. We really want to respect those that provide other solutions in the space and find those that we best align with from a value standpoint for B2B companies.
Yeah, I love that strategy. So the key takeaways are essentially aligning with the platform that they currently use. And then from a competitive standpoint, really just focusing on your strengths and not really worrying so much about selling against your competitors. I think that's really cool. And I wish a lot more ISVs would actually adopt strategies like that, because I really believe that that you have that nailed down. When you're trying to get in touch with various users, and it's interesting how you mentioned earlier that there's a lot more people involved in the decision process now than ever before. Excuse me. And, I think on top of that too, there are a lot more touch points that need to happen before people can make a purchase decision, explore vendors. And it's interesting because, and I guess this is where like ABM comes into play too, because, making sure that you're putting messages out and content out and trying to connect with all of those different people that could possibly be a part of that decision making or decision influencing process. And I think, coming from a user organization where you're sort of on the other side of that, now that you're marketing to users, how do you make sure that you even find the right users and find the users that, or as many users as possible that are involved in the decision-making process?
So I think there's a couple of things there. First, it's segmenting the decision makers within the user organization, right? So there's the ultimate decision makers, whether they're the VP or the C-suite or the like in terms of executive decision making. And I think the first thing there is making sure they're receiving the message that, again, in our case, it's access to capital, it's reduce your day sales outstanding, it's gain visibility into your financials, that you're messaging to that level within the organization with the top level messages of how your solution is going to really help them grow their business. And then I think we look at the technology decision makers and focus on, ease of integration, security, compliance, the things that are going to help make their life easier, right? And then eventually, ultimately, the end user that's going to gain that efficiency and the fact that they're going to have that embedded experience. We talk about embedded solutions versus integrated solutions. And one of the distinctions that I would draw there is, as an embedded solution, PayTrace, by way of example, is, you log into Business Central, our features, our functions, our benefits, our added value are right there within the Business Central screen, no import, export, that kind of thing. So for the end user, that ease of use and extent of the integration, while also important to the technology side, is so critical for the end user because they're the ones that are living and breathing in that system. They don't want to log into any more systems than they absolutely have to, right, to be able to access their financial data. So I think understanding first the messaging for each one of those audiences, and then it's, you fish where the fish are, right? So we look at communities like MSDW, we attend Summit, we promote and sponsor at, Dynamics Con, and we participate in the industry blogs and websites and communities. And so I think the first thing that you do is, you focus that you take those targeted messaging pieces to then those spaces, whether online or off, to educate people about where you fit and how you help them achieve those goals. And in many cases, in our case, we don't gate content, by way of example. And even when we put content on MSDW, once a user logs in to the site, they're able to access, anything they want. But when we promote something in particular through the MSDW platform, let's just say, we target those that are in the Business Central space. And sometimes we'll say, hey, this message is just for partners. Adam, can you make sure that only gets served to partners? Or this message is just for users. And can you make sure that only gets served to users? Similarly, when we get people into our website, when we start that experience, we're going to educate them as a user versus a partner versus an integrator. We've got, specific messaging targeted toward each segment of the audience. And then it's really just a matter of staying in touch with them, continuing that education. And I think it's, it's funny because early in our careers, we all stumble and learn lessons the hard way sometimes, right? But I think in times past and earlier in my career, I would try to do the blanket, like, hey, here's the message, and let's just tweak a couple words for the partner and hope that you can't do that, especially in the Microsoft community, because partners are the trusted advisor for their client. They need beyond surface level. They need that, like we talked about before, that extension of their team support. So it's really, you're serving two different customers right there. You need to understand how the partner goes to market, who they target, what industries they target. Are they even aligned with the ICP that you go to market with? Because otherwise, don't waste their time and don't waste yours. Focus where you're both going to be strategically successful. And, again, then in that user community, make sure that you're at the right events, make sure that you're online at the right places, make sure that when they land on your website, they can find the information that they need, and then really tailor that messaging, that education, that nurture flow for each one of those users and decision makers contributing to the decision within the organization.
Yeah, no, that's phenomenal advice. I have always, and I'm not just saying this because you're on the podcast now, but
Thank you.
I can speak for everybody else at MSDW too. I mean, we always view you as like a super innovative marketer.
Thank you.
And you're not afraid to try new marketing things, which is really cool.
Sure.
And I think something that you just outlined really hit home with me also. It's never an either or situation in terms of marketing vehicles that an ISV should utilize. And I strongly believe that. And I've told people too, I don't think you should just do stuff with me at MSDW. You need to reach people that go to different things and that congregate in different places. And you do a phenomenal job of making sure that your messaging is on point on all these different channels in our ecosystem. And I think that's a huge takeaway for ISVs in this space. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. When, in something that I actually forgot to ask when we were talking about reaching out to users, aside from all the people at the user organizations that are integral in making that decision and influencing it, there's also the partner too that they typically use. So as an ISV, what's the best way to, let's say if you connect with a user directly, what's the best way for an ISV to bring that partner into the conversation? And I'll give you two scenarios here. The first scenario is that they have a partner, and the second scenario is the user does not have a partner that they currently work with. So what do you do?
Yeah. So in the first situation, this has been a belief of mine, no matter what company I've been at, but certainly in the Microsoft channel. When we connect with a user, one of our very first questions, if not the first question, is who's your Microsoft Dynamics partner? And if they're in Microsoft, they essentially have to have a partner. Now they may not be as active as they were at the implementation stage, or they might not call them for tech support or whatever. They might have different levels of relationships, right? But they have a partner in most cases, at least on record. So the first thing we do is ask them who their partner is. And then the next thing we do is we reach out to that partner and say, hey, we're talking to XYZ company. They mentioned that you're their partner. They're interested in our solution. And this does two things. A, it builds trust with that partner to know that you're never going to try to go around them, that you're serving the same customer with the same level of intent and integrity and focus that they would, and that you want them to feel like you're going to treat them with. Because once you burn bridges in this space, it's really, really difficult to rebuild them. Unfortunately, I've seen it happen. And even when it happens with the best of intentions, right? The client wanted this and they asked for that. My personal opinion is, I don't care. I will bring the partner into the conversation, whether they like it or not, kind of a thing, whether the client likes it or not. And even if the client says, hey, we want to continue conversations with you and you guys can work with the partner off the side, that's okay. I'm going to copy the partner on every message. I'm going to have a follow-up, or I'm going to want my rep to have a follow-up with the partner and keep them engaged, because ultimately, again, it's trust, it's integrity, and it's the client relationship. And maybe the client had some, wonky experience at some point that the partner doesn't even know about. And you can bridge that gap and say, hey, you know what? Why don't you go talk to Adam? He can probably set up a call and maybe help smooth things over, help get things on the table. Maybe this is all just a big, misunderstanding somewhere along the way, right? So I never want to get in the middle of that, but I also don't ever want to destroy that partner relationship, because that's so key, because we're going to have other customers together, hopefully, right? And so that's not something that I'm willing to risk from a corporate standpoint or a personal standpoint, because this community is built on relationships too. And there's so many partners out there that I have personal relationships with that I would never put on the line at risk of losing even a customer. I would want them to be involved in that conversation.
Yeah, no, that's great.
It's, it is a tough line sometimes, but there's just no room for that. And when a customer doesn't have an active partner, they say, hey, we're looking to switch, or our partner's no longer in business, or they're about to get acquired and we don't know what that's going to mean for our account. And all of those things are real. Those things happen in, the Microsoft channel and others every day, right? Yep. So I think in that situation, we do our best to say, hey, here's 2 or 3 in your area that we work with. Or we'll send them to I've often sent them to a link of like, here's the list of on Microsoft, and they help you filter and find the partner that's best for your organization. Maybe you have a specific set of technical integration that only some partners can support. We're not going to be in a position to know that necessarily for all customers, but we can help point them in the right direction. And again, I think that builds credibility with the partner. And it also says to the client, we're objective in this relationship. We want to make sure you get the best solution that you need. And we want you to work with somebody who's an expert in that area within the Microsoft partner community. And then another, just, I guess, plug, if you will, is being on the board of directions is also, something that I would encourage people to, look at the directions event, especially as a partner. If they're looking for an event where they can go and learn and extend their expertise. And I see so many partners that go to directions that, even though they have different areas of expertise, they come together to provide a solution for an end user customer. Yeah. Even if they're within different partner organizations, even if they don't always work with the same ISVs, like just the building the bridges that happens at directions is so key for the partner community in the industry. And so small plug for that event happens in April. It's going to be in Las Vegas. I'm sure you'll be there next year as well. Yeah. But it's a great place for partners to not only increase their own knowledge and expertise in how to better support their customers, but then also learn from other partners and what they're doing and what works too. So again, sorry for the plug, but I think it's also a valuable part of the answer to the question.
Yeah, no, direct. Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up about directions. Directions is definitely one of the staple events in this ecosystem. Has been for a long time. It will continue to be so. So that's great. So now that we've talked about marketing direct to users from sort of a product benefit standpoint, what to do if you connect with a user that has a partner, that doesn't have a partner, getting sort of, I guess, a little bit more micro here. From an overall marketing process or procedures that you have, how important is data in your marketing decisions? And I try to kind of throw this in there when I do this podcast, because I always love to hear the different responses that people will give.
So I've had this kind of adage, probably goes back to either when I was in college or shortly after, when I was just beginning as a user. I have this adage of, if you can't measure it, don't do it. Now, there's also the traditional marketing adage of, 50% of my marketing budget is wasted. I'm just not sure which half. So I don't think those things necessarily are congruent. However, I think in the age of data and technology that we have today, so that, that might have been a true statement 10, 15, 20 years ago even, but it really can't be today. We have so much data, and if we can't get access to the data, then we need to ask the people or the tools that we can access to get the right data to influence our decisions, to influence our ROI. Because not just if let's take an event by way of example. You invest in an event, and you know exactly how much you spent. Here was the cost of the booth and the travel and the marketing and the promotion, all the things, right? And you come home with 1,000 leads, let's just say. So you can take that number, divide it by 1,000, you know exactly what your cost per lead was, and then you can see how many of those leads convert to opportunities, et cetera, and deals. But beyond that, I think there's lots of different ways you can get to cost per lead. Digital, it's even, there's even more sophisticated tools and processes and paths that you can use for cost per lead. Beyond that, I think it's the intangibles of looking at that data and go, gosh, X percentage of these leads that I came home with were from this partner, partner A that I've been trying to build a relationship with. Well, what a story does that tell when you call that partner and say, hey, I had 10 of your clients stop by my booth or visit my table or whatever. And now let's start a relationship. By the way, would you be open to a co-marketing campaign that we can, maybe tag team here and educate this customer base? Because if they came by, they're having some issues with their payments. Can we work on this together? And I can't tell you how many times that's opened doors and opened ideas and led to co-marketing campaigns that whether it's a series of emails or videos or webinars or whatever, and ultimately you get to the point where the customers are like, oh my gosh, and can we talk to each other? Can I learn how they're doing the thing with the thing and using your tool or whatever? So it just bridges so many gaps because you're opening a door to a partner being somewhat vulnerable because these 10 customers of theirs, they might be partners with a different ISV in your solution space.
Sure. Yeah.
Are they calling them and saying, hey, I got, I had 10 or 12 of your customers stop by my booth? I don't know. But that's the approach that I like to take is really, let's do this together so that we can educate the clients. And it just deepens or helps establish partner relationships in a way that just knocking on the door and saying, hey, can you sell our solution does. And it's just, that's transactional to me. Whereas saying, hey, we've got at least 10 mutual customers here, potential mutual customers. Can we build a relationship? Is this the beginning of something that could be, that can go well beyond these 10 customers and we can tell the rest of the story to other segments of your customer base as well. Yeah. So that's an area that I really like to, to kind of focus on when you're building that relationship and trying to get the word out.
And that's specifically with partners. What about with ISVs? What do you think about co-marketing campaigns with ISVs that obviously are not your competitors, but they might have a solution for, let's say, like the BC finance module as well, that and the two of your solutions kind of complement each other. What do you think about that?
I love it. I've done many of them in past lives, and I believe now that we have continued to enhance our Business Central solution that more and more of that will continue to happen. In fact, I think we have one on the calendar for January with a program that we're doing with you guys. Yeah. And I think that just makes sense. Again, the Business Central, let's use that as our example, right? Begins and ends in terms of its functionality from a finance perspective. There are other solutions and components that people need to have a complete control and visibility over all of the different aspects, whether it's AR, AP, tax, item, manufacturing, order processing, whatever it is. And so when you can put together these are three very common solutions that are often added to Business Central, and here's the value that they bring to the end user community. And oh, by the way, partners, this might make a nice bundle that you could package up and sell to your customers if they also have these similar needs. I think it's a win-win for both users and partners and also ISVs, because we love to tell the story with each other and support each other. And people have so little time. Adam, the fact that, people will watch a recording at a much higher percentage if there's 2, 3, 4, even 5, maybe different providers or different types of solutions that they can see, as opposed to one. We recognize that. We know everybody's time is limited and their calendars are pushed to the ends, of the extremes. So I think understanding and respecting that for users from a timing perspective is also really important.
I agree with that. How you market, the level of efficiency that you choose to market, and then working collaboration with partners and similar or like-minded ISVs, we'll call them. I think that's really cool. So I guess as we start to wrap this up, I mentioned earlier that, we do find you to be, and I always have found you to be, a super innovative marketer. And I guess, what does that mean? You do lots of different things. You're willing to try new marketing approaches and strategies. And I guess, given sort of the fast pace of how our current space is evolving right now, how do you think that will translate to marketing and how you market to users? People's attention spans are shorter. They have less time to do certain things. Time is probably, I think it is actually, the most valuable asset for anybody. How do you go about making sure that you're staying on point with the message, but that the marketing strategies that you'll have to employ and that you will employ now, essentially, and then in the next year or so, how do you make sure that they'll resonate well?
Yeah, Adam, I think that's, it's really important for us as marketers to continue to educate ourselves, right? The marketing processes continue to evolve. The technologies are beyond belief now. Like, let's take AI, for example. There's so many different ways that we can use AI across, many areas of the organization, but specifically in marketing. And I think what we see is that many marketers underutilize the technology. Back to the data point that we were talking about a little bit before, whether it's, data analytics for your website, or we talked about the event example, or sharing partner information, all of that data is relevant. But if you feed that into, say, an AI tool and say, what does this mean in terms of my expansion into partners that focus on X industry? Let the data and let the AI help you tell that story. And that's just scratching the surface, right? Of course, you take advantage of it in the content and the summarizing and the rewriting and repurposing and all of that. So use the content that you have to be able to extend it, create new content pieces, and all of that can literally give you a whole new set of content based on what you already have, just by using AI and a few well-written key prompts to get the data out of it that you need, so that you can repurpose it for a short podcast, a short video, a brief social post, something else, some other form of content other than what you maybe initially created as a longer video or a blog or a white paper. Give them that summary, that bite-sized portion that people want, because that's all they have time and attention for, as you just described. So I think the education of marketers and making sure that we're on top of what's new and what's coming and what's available to us even today is certainly something that we need to do. And then ABM, you mentioned earlier, using account-based marketing and using those same tools and same content repurposed very specifically for, let's say, an industry of your customer base, or, a growing area of your customer base that you can now introduce them to cross-sell, upsell opportunities and things that maybe they've been just, happily doing what your normal core product was offering them. That's great. Do they know that you have XYZ as a new product available that could also help their business? Using that data to really understand, the demographics, the industry information, the growth patterns, the customer's strategic focus. How do they go to market? How do they earn new business? Who do they partner with? That whole ecosystem visibility often took a long time and a lot of hard work and manual research to come up with. Whereas now we have the tools that can aggregate that kind of data and get us to that, 75, 80%. Of course, we're going to have human analysis and understanding and interpretation of that. But let's use what we have at our fingertips to get as far along that right now used to take a lot of, right now can save us a lot of time that we used to spend in that manual research phase. So I think AI is key. I think education is key. I think reuse of content into those multiple short forms of consumable pieces that people are able to grab, whether it's email, social, MSDW, or other platforms, that they can consume that in a very short period of time in a way that works for them. Some people like video, some people don't. Some people want to read a white paper, some people don't, So I think it's making sure that you're serving it in all formats and platforms that people are able and willing to consume, as well as using the data to drive what type of new content you should serve to which segments of your audience.
Yeah, that fantastic advice. I love it. I want to give you a big thank you for joining the Biz Apps Marketing Minutes podcast. This was a super awesome conversation. I personally learned a ton. I'm sure everybody watching this will learn a lot too. awesome takeaways here. So thank you very much. And I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. Thanks everyone for joining.